Good afternoon, and you are rolling on the road with Dr. Kimberly and Dave. Dave, I know. Where's Heidi? Where's Dave? Dave's not home. Dave is on assignment today. But guess what? I have a wonderful co host. So I just want you to know. Okay, Kim, do like this. Ready? Okay. Kim, Wonder Twins, power, activate. Boom. Yes. Yes. So we have Kim Davey, who is filling in today as a guest co-host on Rolling on the Road, Dr. Kimberly and Dave. And she is the community engagement and advocate
Advocacy.
manager. And the wonderful thing that I love about that is on the outside of her door. I'm not crying today. Where my tissue? Hold on. Okay. So, uh, well, hello, Breon. How are you today? That's Breon Edwards. She just checked in all the way from Detroit, Michigan. And for those of you who are not from Michigan, Michigan looks just like this. We're over here by the pinky part, but down around the middle. And Breon is over here by Mr. Thummy. Yeah, she's right about there. And she's right here. Yeah, that's where we go. We're right about here. And guess what? Our guest is kind of like over here,
Across the lake, across the pond.
across the pond. But as I was saying, many of you know that Disability Advocates of Kent County is in their new home at 160 68th Street Southwest, and that's Grand Rapids, Michigan, which just happens to be right down the street from me. And they are in the Special Olympics Michigan building, the first ever of its kind internationally. Oh my gosh. All right, come on, everybody, put your hands together. Woo-hoo! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Yes. What an awesome feat that was there. And I think that we have the right person today, Miss Robin Jones, who just happens to be the ADA guru of all time,
Right.
who hails from over there in the Chi Town with us today. I'm excited. So I have a question for you, Robin. How
Mhm.
impressed were you when you went through the facility?
Well, first and foremost, I love the idea of collaboration of disability organizations and groups in one building. I think that's one of the things that people really struggle with is, what services here, what services there, where do I have to go across town, especially in big metropolitan areas like Grand Rapids, where people are pretty diverse. And as I understand, your transportation system is not the best in the world. So I think that concept alone, when I heard about it, was wonderful. And then when I got the opportunity to actually see the facility and how they have transformed it and are using the space in such, productive manner, from the way that they've designed it for the offices to the apartment and the accessibility kind of demonstration areas and things. And then just to know that down the street, you've got the, individuals, if you have questions about people with autism, or you have services or something that you need for people who are deaf and hard of hearing or whatever, they're right there. They're right in your backyard. And then to serve you or to help the independent living center, but also then to help your consumers. So I just think it's a great concept, and I wish that more organizations would collaborate like this, to bring your resources together, because not everybody can afford a building all by themselves, and we pay, a lot of rent for stuff, but why not have the rent go into something that's collaborative, where everybody's a win instead of just some corporate, entity out there making money off of our rent that we're paying. So it's
Well, I
great.
thought maybe I might have an office down there, but I think I've commandeered a lot of the space.
Well, I know, it's nice to go down there. I love the way that they have it, especially the offices for disability advocates is with, with all of the capital campaign that was done, and all the, the efforts to raise money and to support the organization, and then recognize those people with the different signs and things. So people know when they come in there who's been supporting that organization, which I think adds a lot of credibility to an organization also.
I know, especially when you just walk in the lobby, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
think you might think that Dr. Kimberly might like disability advocates of Kent County just a little bit, you know.
Yeah, that sign's pretty big.
And that's, I just think that it's wonderful that Kim is on today because the office that she's in is in memory of my dad, who was a
Oh,
great advocate, and he just happened to be blind. And so he taught me
that's
how
awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah, that's
he
great.
taught me how to be disabled. He was United States. As a matter of fact, today is the Army's birthday. So
Oh,
happy birthday to the Army. I
very
am
good.
Navy, and my father and my husband are Army. But my father was in Vietnam and was exposed to Agent Orange, and
Hmm.
he died about 16 months ago. So
Oh, did he lose his sight? Did he lose his sight as a result of his
yes,
Vietnam service as well? I know they had a
exactly.
lot of flash
Yes,
explosions and things like that. Okay.
yes,
Hmm. Hmm.
he did. He did. And I think we talked a little bit about this in the green room, and the big question is the why. You know, this facility has been built. It's still building out each individual, you know, um, nonprofit. How have you been able to get people in the Chicago area just to come in and be a part?
Well, sometimes it's a challenge, and and other times it's easy. It just depends on what's going on and what's happening. Is that I think that inclusion is something that everyone is interested in. I mean, or the majority of people are interested. I think a lot of times people just don't know how to do it or
Mhm.
are not comfortable with it. So it's like kind of bringing people around. I mean, I come from a background, you talk about growing up. I mean, I come from a background of a lot of healthcare in my family background, nurses and optometrists and doctors and therapists and things of that nature. So I kind of grew up in an environment with a lot of healthcare exposure. And I started working as a kid. My parents are very volunteer oriented. They're very much community. I came from a small town. So we as kids were always encouraged to get involved and be involved in our community. And so I, as a younger person, became what was called at that time a candy striper
Oh my
at
gosh, I remember. So that
Candy
makes me old,
stripers. Mhm. Well, I'm older than you, so there you go. But yes, so if those that don't familiar, that was a term or it was used or assigned to individuals who were
Yep.
young that would volunteer in medical settings, hospitals, and other kinds of settings to provide supports and assistance in any way that you were asked to do. So you would help transport people, you would bring things to people, from the gift shop, maybe a newspaper or, something. You would help with meals. You would help people, if they got flowers delivered. I mean, just all kinds of different things. So you were exposed to and working with, people and their families in, these medical settings in a variety of different ways. And I did that all the way through high school. And I had a goal of, becoming a healthcare professional myself. And I was exploring different options that I wanted to do. And I ended up becoming an occupational therapist. And so, and what it's interesting, what drew me to occupational therapy, and again, it's going to date me horribly, is there was a movie that some may remember called Other Side of the Mountain. And it was the story of Jill Kenmont, who
Yes.
was a Olympic skier
Yep.
who during one of her training runs, she had an accident and she broke her neck and she became a quadriplegic. And the movie Other Side of the Mountain was the story of her life, basically, and her recovery process and stuff, and her
Mhm.
life afterwards. And one of the things that happened in that movie was they showed her in her therapies and things of that nature, and they showed her doing really practical things. She was learning how to eat, and she was learning how to put her makeup on and stuff, because of course her boyfriend and who had been her ski coach and all of these kinds of things were happening. And I just was really intrigued by that process and said, that's the kind of work I want to do. I want to do something that's meaningful. I want to do something that works with people to make a difference in how they live and what they do. And so that drew me to the occupational therapy profession, which I then joined. And when
I
I
think that is so
yeah,
it's so crazy because I was in the fifth grade. I remember the movie,
yeah,
and I was in the fifth grade, and my mother suffered from severe migraines, and
okay,
so she just said, "You have gifted hands," and I would just, give her massages, and of course, all the lights had to be out, and I would get
yep.
the compress and just do all the stuff. We had these. Remember when they used to go door to door with the Britannica
Oh yeah,
encyclopedia?
where they would sell it. Yeah, yes,
Oh my
right, yeah.
gosh! And then they had this medical dictionary, and they said, well, just keep the medical dictionary. Let us know, if you want it, and you get like you had a 10-day trial to look at all the books. And so I tried to read everything that they had in the books, but they told us if we didn't get, the Britannicas, that we could keep the medical guide. And that's how I started reading. I didn't know what a physical therapist was, but I knew
Mm-hmm.
it had something to do that I could help her. I could fix some things. And so here it was in fifth grade, we had to write uh, a story, and it could be fictional or it could be, real. And I just talked about how I wanted to be this physical therapist because I wanted her to feel better, because I'm sure there were other people, and I started reading in that medical dictionary.
Yep.
And so, that was my first introduction to say, I want to do something. I didn't know that that was considered advocacy, because it's like,
Well,
even though I didn't get into the medical field, but it was like I knew I wanted to help her. And by reading about her condition and then talking to her about it and finding ways to improve the quality of her life, you know, that is advocacy.
yep.
So
But
I think,
we didn't use those terms back there. Those terms weren't even in the on the radar. You didn't even talk about it because if you think back to that time when you were there, the jo- general person with a disability really didn't have much of a voice. They
oh,
were
we won't even get into
very
the
rarely.
baseball.
Yeah.
Kim,
Yeah.
what was your introduction into advocacy?
Well, I would say that it probably goes back to my childhood as well, in that when I was, um, 5, 6, 7 years old, my grandmother had diabetes, and she went blind gradually. She lost her vision, and she didn't want her grandchildren to know that she couldn't see us. So she would pretend to be looking at us. I remember that, just finally asking my dad, why can grandma not make eye contact
Oh,
with
wow.
me? And she ended up having a leg amputated and being a wheelchair user. Um,
Thank
and
you for that.
it just had a profound impact on me and how I looked at the human condition. So, that was just incredibly important to me. And, I think that it's so easy to just lose sight of what is what people deal with every day. I had open heart surgery when I was 57 years old, and that also profoundly changed my life and impacted, um, a tremendous amount of how I viewed the world.
hmm I think you bring up a really interesting point because I think when you think about all the things we've talked about, all of us have had some, and I think everybody, I don't care who you are out there, you've had some connection. It's whether I think it's how you receive it and how you see it. That informs you, or changes you, or whatever. I mean, there's some people who just ignore it. They have it in their family, whatever, and they shun it and they push it aside and they don't embrace it, or they don't do that. And others who, see it as part of the natural condition, of human nature, of human society and stuff, and accept it, and just it's part of the norm. It's part of what everybody's family has somebody who has a disability, or and such. Yeah, and I think and the thing we also forget about is any one of us can become disabled at any point in life. I mean, it's the one protected class that one can become a member of at any time from birth to death. I myself, acquired my disability by traveling. I traveled. I went overseas. I ate something I probably shouldn't have, and I acquired E. coli that went into my heart and my lungs and my kidneys, and it ended up blowing out my kidneys. And now I am stage 5 kidney disease, and this far away from a transplant. And I mean, it's just it's just a total different life changer overnight, type of thing that can happen to anybody. And people just have to recognize that disability is a human condition that we all will experience at some point. Whether you call it a disability, every one of us has some level of limitation.
Absolutely. We are now 16 minutes after the hour, and we want to say thank you so much for tuning into Rolling on the Road with Dr. Kimberly and Dave. Dave is on assignment today, and we are thankful for our co-host, Miss Kim Davey, who is the manager, the advocacy manager and community engagement. We love her.
It's a long title.
And our guest today is Miss Robin Jones, the director of Great Lakes ADA Center at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And you started that. Why?
I started the center. Wow. So I was working when I worked in rehabilitation traditionally, and then I really got disenfranchised with the medical model, and trying to make everything perfect for everybody. We had perfect bathrooms to show people, and then people would go home and they would come back 2 months later, and we'd talk to them and be like, they didn't find perfect anywhere in the community. They didn't, where's that bathroom? It wasn't in my home, it wasn't in the it wasn't out in the community, it wasn't whatever. And that just really got discouraging to me. What was I doing? I'm spending hours of this kind of false world and stuff to ensure. So I was very fortunate to get involved with some individuals with disability in the advocacy community, who were already involved in independent living, and we really saw some areas that were missing, some geographic areas that didn't have coverage for a Center for Independent Living. And so we banded together, and it was a group of people with and without disabilities, and we got a center started, and I became the director of that center. And that was right when the ADA was percolating through Congress and such, back in the late 80s. And so I was very fortunate to be able to work directly on the ADA's passage. That was one of the key things as a new director of a Center for Independent Living, was trying to get support from legislators, trying to get support from people with disabilities, telling their stories, telling the stories, of why the ADA was needed, why, if you don't have transportation, it doesn't have much good to have a job, because I can't get in, I can't get to work, if the buildings and facilities aren't accessible, it doesn't matter if I can get there, I can't get in, so it was all of those kind of intersection issues and stuff that were coming up. And so I was very fortunate to do that. And after the ADA was passed, then the federal government put out these kind of call for these centers like mine, because the disability community was very smart. In the passage of the ADA, the disability community made sure that there was language in the law that said all federal agencies must have some form of technical assistance available to help with the compliance of the ADA, because they knew from past laws that had been passed and such that they were like, okay, here's a law, here's what whatever, but nobody ever told anybody what to do or how to do it. And so the disability community was really smart in saying, in the law, we're going to actually write it in there that there has to be technical assistance. And so what the feds did is they put all this call out for, okay, how are we going to do this technical assistance? And I was fortunate enough to be part of the group that was looking at this issue, and we applied for, we got the funding to start the center. So I'm one of 10. So I'm only one in this cog, the wheel out there of technical assistance. So,
Okay, so we really need to try to answer this question because there are those who have been born disabled, those who have acquired disability, and now we have another group due to a pandemic that has just flooded. I mean, never in history has there been, oh, we just had hundreds and thousands of people around the world get thrown into one particular group. That's just saying, like, oh my God, we're going to paint everybody black, or we're going to paint everybody, they're going to be Irish, or we're going to put them in the LGBTQ community. There's never, since the earth was created, where just a group, I mean, an insurmountable number of people are thrown into one particular population.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
the pandemic was definitely the impetus for this show. It was just after the lockdown in March. And I think I want to say it was 2 weeks into the lockdown, and I was reading an article in Forbes that said, now the world gets to live what we live every single day. The inability to access the world in the way in which they need to access it. And that this was the perfect social model to be able to teach people what it's like to live the life that we live every single day, whether you're living with, neural, physical, you know, emotional, whatever your disability is, everyone gets to experience it the same exact way,
Yeah.
not having access. And I said, oh my God, I just love this. And as I read through the article, I immediately sent a message to the director of the Centers for Independent Living, Michigan, and I said, "Hey, so did you see this article?" And of course, I CC Dave in it, and I'm like, "So what happens to all of us now? What do we do?" I've been there when I first acquired my disability back. It's been 9 years now. We were in the middle of a snowstorm. I want to say a month, 2 months in. We're in this horrible snowstorm. And so they ration care. That was my first experience of, what ration care looks like. A lot of people realized what ration care was in 2020,
You bet.
but I experienced it first in 2013, where they made the decision that, hey, we only have, 6 nurses that can get out, and the only persons that were going to get care were quadriplegics. And I said, well, that didn't make any sense to me because number one, if you're a quadriplegic, you are not released to your own care unless you're released to a person. You have to have someone or move in with someone. Otherwise, you have to stay in a facility. So that didn't make sense. They already have someone that they're living with that's caring for them. You know, they're only receiving respite care. So it wasn't even care for the patient. It was respite care for their, primary caregiver. And I was like, well, they should have planned for that. I mean, they knew something like that could happen, was my first thought. And I said, you have all of these other people who cannot take care of themselves. Like myself, I couldn't even get up to answer my doors. So like once my caregiver would leave for the night, I would have to wait for her to come back the next morning. So, I only had that overnight, but guess what? They bathed me, put me in the bed. They fed, it's like a baby. You put the baby to bed, you're going to sleep all night. I'm a baby that slept all night. Yes. you know? And so 36 hours go by. No one has come to care for me, and I'm just there. Of course, they apologize. I mean, and I tell you, by the time I got done, they had some brand new policies put in place on how things were going to be handled. And so it was an aha moment, because I spent the first 47 years of my life with everything was accessible to me, for me, with me, never had to stop and think about it. And now it wasn't.
Well, what was really interesting during this time, and you really bring up an excellent point, because, but on the other side, it created some different kinds of challenges, because a lot of the things that people started to use in COVID that people with disabilities had been using, like delivery services and things of that nature,
Yes.
now became unavailable to them, because the onslaught of how many other people were starting to use those services now made them unavailable to people who needed them and had been relying upon them. So we had many people who had been using delivery services, had no problem, had a regular schedule and such. COVID hits. Now everybody's using delivery. Now you can't even get it scheduled anymore, because there's not enough people delivering for the demand that's there. And now the people who were using it and relied on it, and it was their program, couldn't access it. So it was this really different dynamic that that also occurred, that people with disabilities have used a lot of these kind of remote services and things of that nature for a long time, because they couldn't get transportation or things of that nature and before. And then now everybody had to use it, or everybody was using it. And now you've got this disproportionality of people who really have no other option. A lot of people were using it out of convenience, because they didn't want to go to the grocery store, or didn't want to do things. But for people with disabilities, it was a life or death issue. It's like, I don't even have the option. It's not even safe for me to go to the grocery store on my own. I need that delivery service. It's an absolute need,
Yeah, but I think that it gave, we talked a little bit about it behind stage, and then just a little bit came through at the beginning of the show. But what's important to know here, it was an opportunity for conversations to happen that did not happen before.
Exactly.
Now everyone is looking and saying, hey, guess what? This is not as bad as I thought that it was going to be, especially when it came to their budgets, to be able to make all of these accommodations for everyone, because they were not able to get out and engage in the community. So I think that moving forward, I don't think we'll have a problem with having these conversations, because it was amazing to me. 6 weeks, I counted them, friends and neighbors, that it took us in my neck of the woods to get everybody up and going. It was 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I said, you mean to tell me that these people have been fighting for 32 years, for the stuff that y'all made happen in 6 weeks?
Yep.
Six
Yep.
weeks.
Yep. I mean, but again, so many different things are, have come out of it that are positive, like you're saying, and people have had to learn to adjust, and I think forever change the landscape of how business even operates. Like, you saw businesses never wanted to do, I never would have put efforts and resources into curbside service and things of that nature, and stuff. Now it's become, every business offers it, no matter what, and even as a pandemic has curtailed, they saw it as a business opportunity, so now if I don't, and I can't, or whatever, get into the store for whatever reason, or just because of, the effort it takes, I know that curbside delivery option, is available for me. And it's not just a disability,
that's
issue.
Probably one of my most favorite things that happen, because, your community gets to know you. Let's just say that your community really gets to know you, and I'm very much a creature of habit, have my own little patterns, and so I've always loved the fact that, hey, I shop on Tuesdays at 2:00. John's always in the parking lot, and it's like, oh, hold on, I got your cart for you. Brings out, the riding cart, helps me out of my car, gets in. All right, I go in there. Becky's in there to help me grocery shop, gets everything in there in my basket, helps me check out. And then we come right on back out to the car. John's right there, boom, puts all the groceries in the car, and I'm good to go. I get home, yep, I got my own little system, just dump stuff in the wheelchair and push the button, and I'm like, and I'm in. And so when it was made available everywhere, I just was like, thank you, Jesus. Sometimes it just takes, people get knocked up. Okay, I'm getting ready to date myself again. Gilligan's Island, boom, you get knocked in the head with a coconut, and you're like, oh, wow, all these wonderful ideas come. Yeah, we could do this. But the conversation piece, though, do you think that there are still, Kim, in what you do every day, do you still think that there are conversations that are not being had?
Oh, absolutely. I do think there are conversations that are not being had, and that's, that is certainly the responsibility of all of those of us who work for disability advocates to have those important conversations with people and challenge the way people think and help to educate people, because a lot of times people just they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And it's important to have those conversations with people.
So this is year 4. And so for our viewing and listening audience, this is year 4 for Absolutely Accessible Kent. There were some great folks about 6, maybe 7 years ago that got together and said, we need to figure out a way to make Kent County more accessible. And once we create this model, and we kind of map it out, figure it out, then we can start having seminars and teaching other people, bringing people in, such as Robin, who have found the best way to get it done, whether it's through the conversations, or whether you have already put something in place, or if it's with technology or a combination of all of it. We can bring those folks in and see what areas they have made great strides in, so that we can see it and invite folks to come in and see. I think that, we keep getting, I think, a little bit bigger each year, but maybe the space this year was the biggest space that we've ever had, to kind of have it in. So it seemed like, wow, where'd all the people go? But I just realized that, we used to be, a big fish in a little bitty pond, and now we got a big pond, we in a lake, ocean, as far as space is concerned. So I'm really looking forward to next year, us having more people, more diverse group of people to come in to say, hey, look, especially those people who live in rural areas and in those little townships, to say, we need to get here. We need to see, because we've got this old county building that nobody can get into. So grandma can't go down there and pay the water bill anymore. She can't go pay her city taxes, and she doesn't like to, write checks, because she keeps her money up underneath the mattress in a pillowcase, tucked in a pocketbook from 1929. And, because she don't believe in banks either. But Nana's not going to be here forever. And, Uncle Jim, he's got bad knees, so he can't come up those stairs. They've got 25 stairs to get into the front door. So maybe we need to attend to see what can we do to make things better for our little township, that we never thought about people with disabilities were going to come there, or that, they would be as active in the community. My dad, perfect example, would catch a cab, which I thought was crazy, but mind you, he could see for the first 55 years of his life. Now that he's 65 and he's taking a cab, and the guy was like, oh yeah, I'm going to get him. So he drives extra, and he told him, you went the wrong way. Like, how do you know that? Because I know where I live. I don't forget, and I know how the neighborhood is. I know how many turns it takes to get to the bank. You made one turn too many. Yeah, and this is only a $6 ride. We're at $9.25. No, not doing that. But just even in those small things, especially when you live.
Yeah, but even things like, sidewalks and some of the infrastructure things that, communities don't even think about, I mean, oftentimes the focus is a lot on buildings, and stuff, but what do we use more? We use sidewalks and curb cuts and things of that nature to get ourselves from point A to B, and those are often the most neglected areas, and often don't think about the fact that, that makes a difference for someone who doesn't have transportation and has to walk or has to roll someplace, that if their sidewalks aren't maintained, or their curb cuts aren't maintained, they're not going to get there. And that, this is a huge area.
I was just in Lansing on Thursday and Friday, and I was at the Radisson and needed to cross the street to get to the parking structure. and I almost tipped out of my, scared me and everybody because the curb cut was in such ill repair. We had to figure out the lesser of two evils between the divide at the curb cut, where it was almost completely gone. So there was a big pit, and then let's navigate around a pothole, and we kind of caught the front tire caught, and I just went forward, and we were just like, okay, everybody just ran, and we were like, whew, okay, I'm sorry, I had a flashback. I think I got PTSD. Whew. I mean, but it was scary. And so the first thing we did was, okay, look, I got to take a picture of this, send it into the city. We saw some markings, but they were really, really old. So we weren't sure, like, okay, was this a project they were going to get to and they forgot? But guess what? It was attached to the Radisson Hotel. So now you're going to lose business if people can't get in and out. And I mean, and it was right at their, you come up their little circle drive. So
I know exactly. I know exactly where you're at. I've been there many times. Yeah.
And so I appreciated the examples that you brought. I mean, as the whole room. So guys, I don't know if they're going to have it on the replay where you can watch it on YouTube at some point, but underneath Disability Advocates of Kent County, and that's on youtube.com. The pictures that you showed, the room was just filled with laughter, but it was so real. Oh my God, it was so real. Where they had a handicapped spot, but they had made it around where a tree had grown up in the middle of the sidewalk. Who can get that?
Right.
Or I love where they put the ramp at the base of a stair. Oh yeah, we put the ramp there. Okay, but that covered like 3 stairs, and there were still 10 more stairs to get.
Yeah. But I got you to the first stair. I got you up the first stair.
I got you there. And one of the things that, well, yeah, I think we kind of had to stop because of the pandemic. But my most favorite thing to do, as we were putting together, this absolutely accessible Kent project, was, okay, we're going to do some charrettes. We're going to go out there in the city, and we're going to really see what it looks like. So we were doing curbs and coffee and curbs and cocktails. And we would go out. We would video and talk, take pictures and post. And people were just like, oh my gosh. The one restaurant that we went to for curbs and coffee, I parked at the front door. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I got the best spot, right there in front. And I get out. There were 3 stairs to get up, and everyone, their table was right at the door. And they're like, oh, wait for me. Hey, how you doing? And I'm like, but I can't get in.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, well, you can get in all the way down there, which was like a half a block. And when I got all the way down there, the door was not an automatic door, and it was a fire door. So, for those who don't understand, fire doors are heavier, so that in the event that there's a fire, it can contain it so that the people can get out. Well, if you're in a wheelchair, I don't care if it's manual or motorized, you cannot navigate a fire door in your chair without assistance. And so someone came out, we wheeled all the way down. We clocked it. It was exactly 200 feet to get for the wheelchair accessible entrance. To get in. And I parked 3 feet away from the door and 5 feet away from where the table was, where everyone was sitting. But I had to go 200 feet to get in.
That's all too common, and that's where the common sense with architects and designers and stuff really don't think about it. They check off the box for compliance. Do we have an accessible entrance? They don't look at, is it usable, or how is it used by people? That's one of our biggest education areas that we still have yet to overcome, is that, usability. There's a difference between accessible and usable. So,
well, in that moment, I mean, I've gone to many conversations where I have been the only wheelchair user, so they could pick my brain and let's talk about your lived experience. One of the questions was about design, well, do you think that, we should design this? Is this going to be cost effective? And the only thing that I could think of is when you agree to make decisions based off the most excluded, then you have included everyone. They were like, what? Wow. Can we break that down? I said, absolutely. And I said, because I look at it in the sense of, let's look at the worst case scenario. What is the worst case scenario that can happen? And if you design, for that or create based off of that, then guess what? Everybody can use it. I always use the example of how I got married in 2019, and I went to go pick up my husband's ring after it had been sized from the jeweler, and a few days before the wedding. And wonderful parking, wonderful structure. Mall is just amazing. You can park, you can go straight, down your cutaway. It's got a covered roof, and you can get right into the mall. You can push the button, the door opens up, and it actually stays open long enough for you to wheel through. Because sometimes some of the timers are just
Yep.
I've been like,
Yep.
I'm like, what's wrong with her? Do we need to dial 911? No. How about you fix this? I'm caught. And as I got ready to push the button, here comes a couple. She's got all of the bags, the diaper bags. They had a set of twins. They're screaming at the top of their lungs. He's frustrated. She's frustrated. And how wonderful it was for them to take their elbow and go boom. That opened up. Everybody could come through at the same time. She's got packages. He's got screaming babies.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to find a bottle. And it's like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. We're not having to figure out how to open up the door as well, and who's going to hold the door. You got packages. I got babies. We got this big, huge stroller. There was a button.
Yep.
There was a button. Because everybody is disabled temporarily, permanently, or situationally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At any given time. I think about the guy who is, a UPS deliverer.
Yep.
I worked at a place, we constantly got boxes. And how nice it is, he can just go like this, boom, the door opens for him, and he can come right on through. The doors are extra wide. Some of them, they put the bar right in the middle. I'm like, who thought that up? Because who can get through that little bitty space? If you have a wheelchair like mine that has all, computer on board and all these extras and, a sippy cup holder and cell phone holder, guess what? Door frame, the regular door frame is not accommodate.
Nope. Yep. Exactly. And, that automatic door thing, it comes up all the time because, again, because you're at a compliance issue. It's not required for you to, have the automatic door. But man, if you look at how many people benefit from an automatic door, just as you're describing, it's not just about disability sometimes. It's like looking at just, making it easier for everybody or making it accessible for everybody, the big A, not just the little a, but the big A, accessibility for everybody instead of just, thinking of it only in that narrow group. People, why do the big box stores do it? Because they figured it out. They figured out that, your people are coming in and out with, kids and with packages and, all kinds of things. And it's, much easier to use a automatic door. It's a no-brainer.
Well, you know what? I'm like Mr. Rogers. I'm so glad we had this time. No, guess what? That's Carol Burnett.
Now you're dating yourself also.
She said, I'm so glad we had this time together.
Find together. Yes.
And I just, this was my favorite part was this.
Yes.
Right here.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right
and that was actually to her mother, I think. That was to say hello to her mother. That was a secret signal of her mother. Yep.
And so I just said, when I get famous, when I do like this, yeah. So I have my little signals to my family who's watching. My granddaughter said, Nana, is today Tuesday? What do you do on Tuesdays, Nana?
That's great.
Yeah. So, Kim?
Yes.
Any final thoughts?
Oh my gosh, my brain goes in so many directions. There are so many opportunities for people to embrace um, disability and to um, play a small part in whatever way they can to make the world more accessible for everybody. And I would encourage and challenge people to think about that and what they can do to make a difference in the world and in the lives of others.
Robin, cost
Well, I mean,
effectiveness. No,
huh?
I want you to tell us in your final words the cost effectiveness of it.
Well, I mean, I actually hate to use cost effectiveness because I think that's a that's it gets down to money and things of that nature. But there is that element of the fact that there is the savings to everybody in energy, in potential liability for somebody falling or tripping or whatever. Because remember, every one of us is just a second away from an accident or something, at any time whatsoever. The fact that the whole idea of your customer base and really understanding the fact that you by not being accessible, you're excluding a whole group of individuals who could be a valuable customer of yours. And when you complain that you don't have enough revenues, or you're not reaching the right organizations, or the right demographics or whatever, really making sure that you really include people with disabilities in that demographic, because disability is, again, it crosses every other aspect of society. It crosses age, it crosses ethnicity, it crosses sexual orientation, it crosses everything. And all of us at some point will have some dual identities, and disability is more than likely to be one of those, especially if you live long enough, because aging itself is a disability, whether you want to admit it or not. We have limitations. So I think that really, looking at it from a cost effectiveness issue is really to say that, doing accessibility, embracing everybody, and really recognizing the value that everybody brings to you as a customer or to a client or to whatever, is what we all want, and we want everybody to achieve, and to look for, and not to be exclusionary, but to really make sure that you're inclusive of everybody, and that disability is on that list of who you're including, because for too long disability has been left off of that list.
Very well said, Robin.
And it has been. And we want to say thank you so much to Robin Jones, Director of Great Lakes ADA Center, University of Illinois at Chicago Institute on Disability and Human Development. They're located at 1640 West Roosevelt Road, room 405, Chicago, Illinois, zip code 60608, number 312-413-1407. And if you just put in, Great Lakes ADA, or you put in Robin Jones, oh my goodness, a plethora of information comes up. That's what happens,
Google.
You do things a long time and you do it effectively. That they say, good news travels fast and bad news travels even faster. But I beg to differ. I believe that the news of Robin Jones and what she started more than 30 years ago has been like a California wildfire. It has spread and spread, and the flames just do not go out because it reaches across the water. It doesn't even, go out when it came across the Great Lakes. It found its way over here to, again, here we are. This is Michigan, and it's over here. Yeah, over this way. And we are just so grateful to have the opportunity to talk. Please, 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 please call her. And if you forget all of this information, you know what? It's on the replay, and you can always call Disability Advocates of Kent County 616-949-1100. And yep, right in the middle is 911. Do not call with your medical emergency, but if you have an ADA emergency, you can dial 616-949-1100. You can always call 100 Shades of Diversibility, 616-514-0731, and we can definitely help you. If you have a great contribution. You're doing something that's noteworthy, even if you're not. We don't want that bad stuff. But please give us a call. We would love to have you on the show and highlight what it is that you're doing for the community, because around here we love shameless plugs. Yes, yes, yes. And I have to plug one in for you. Nailed it. Everybody knows what my favorite color is. What's Kim's favorite color?
Purple.
Purple.
Yes, and this wonderful is called the Drip Cup. Yep. I want to say thank you so much to you. Nailed it. I like this job. I get so many wonderful for gifts, and because I just love doing shameless plugs. But we want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you this time again next week. Please be safe. If you have not gotten your vaccine and you are eligible for one and you can medically take it, please do. I am really starting to enjoy the outside and hanging out with folks. That's only because I got like 5 vaccines. I'm just saying.
That's right. Exactly.
I have 5 vaccines, and I got that little stuff that cleans your nose, and I have a test, and if I'm out for more than 15, 20 minutes, I come home and test myself. Okay, make sure y'all got fluids and stuff. I'm just saying. But please be responsible, and we will see you on next week.